That's right, you're watching Budget 2026 here on Business Day TV. And good news for us, government has decided to withdraw the 20 billion rand in tax increases that were provisionally included in last year's budget. So let's get into it and unpack that decision along with all things tax related to come out of today's announcement. For that, I'm joined by Devs Moodley, Senior Manager and Tax Consulting at Forvis Mazars in studio, and Kyle Mandy, Director of Tax Technical and Policy at PwC via Zoom. Lady, gent, thank you so much for your time today. I've highlighted there that 20 billion rands in tax hikes that has been withdrawn. When we were talking off air, Devs, you did mention that it was a positive budget. So I'm guessing some of these tax measures met your expectations.
So I think when we went into it, the expectation was no expectation at all, given what happened last year.
Fair.
So it was a bit of a buffering moment to see such positive outcomes coming through in the tax budget.
Mm-hmm. And what would you say then, Kyle? Would you describe this as a tax neutral budget?
Absolutely. I was actually talking to one of my colleagues a little earlier and so on, and discussing how low we've set the bar these days. When we take the fact that there are not going to be tax increases as a real positive, it's not a case that we've had tax breaks or anything like that. We actually, as taxpayers, are essentially put in a position where we're standing still. But we're taking that and we're celebrating this budget as if we'd won the lottery. So it just shows, how low our expectations are as taxpayers and tax advisors these days when it comes to the budget. But all in all, absolutely positive, given what could have been with the position we were in at this time last year, to be honest.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And I think generally that's the type of culture we have in this country. We really do celebrate those small wins because we come from a really difficult time. You see it with what's taking place with growth as well, and in terms of sentiment when it comes to the country. Let's talk about some of the relief efforts for consumers. Bracket creep has been fully adjusted. Does that generally ease pressure on consumers, or does it simply prevent a silent tax increase, Devs?
So I think it's a positive because the consumer's buying power hasn't been affected. So they're not moving into higher tax bracket, and that's a positive from a tax perspective because it's been adjusted for inflation. So you're not sitting with the dreaded bracket creep where your salary hasn't increased that much and now you're paying more taxes on your salary.
Yeah, and this has been a pressing issue, Kyle, that bracket creep in particular, considering some of the pressures on consumers. On the other side, though, when looking at tax collection and that really coming through on that front, one would then say that consumers are healthy, are resilient.
No, they are. And look, there is more good news in the budget from a fiscal drag point of view. We tend to focus on these tax tables and so on and have those been adjusted for inflation, and they have been adjusted for inflation. You can debate whether or not you believe the inflation rate that's being projected or not. That's a separate issue. But the reality is that that Treasury has proposed to adjust those tax brackets for inflation, and that will put taxpayers in a position where they stand still if you look at that and so forth, in isolation. So that the effective tax rate won't go up, it won't go down. They'll be in the same position as they are today when they get into the next fiscal year, and they've had a salary increase. In fact, immediately they'll be in a better position because even if they don't get an increase, the amount of tax they're going to pay is going to go down.
So,
So I was just going to say that the one more interesting observation to make where taxpayers have really benefited is if you go and look at the budget documentation, Treasury has proposed for the first time in many years to adjust some of the monetary amounts and thresholds. And that is good news for taxpayers. An example of that is the maximum deductible contributions to retirement funds. But there are a number of others that are being adjusted. And those will provide real relief as we sit today for for taxpayers, and something that we've been advocating for a number of years.
Yeah.
The Treasury has not been adjusting those for inflation. And then you end up with essentially stealth increases, if you like, in taxes, because none of that is disclosed, unlike with your standard tax tables. It just doesn't get disclosed as what the impact of that ultimately is in terms of tax revenues and collections and so on. So that is the real good news for taxpayers in some senses, even more so than the adjustments that have actually been made to the tax tables themselves.
I see you nodding there, Devs. Do you agree with Kyle? I mean, also just looking at, the pool of taxpayers, which is quite small here in South Africa.
No, definitely. And what we've also seen come through in the budget is a number of CGT increases in the exclusions. So your primary residence exclusion of 2 million has now increased to 3 million, which is a very positive sign for taxpayers who want to sell property. We've also seen the deceased estate exclusion increase as well to 440,000, which is very, very positive. Your annual exclusion also increased from a CGT perspective to 50,000. So we are seeing a lot of positive steps being taken by Treasury.
All right. Kyle, let's talk about SARS for a minute. The minister credited improved compliance at the Revenue Service firm. How much of the rebuild are we seeing is on the back of SARS? We did see Edward Kieswetter and his team getting additional money last year to improve efficiencies, to improve compliance as well.
Yes, so I mean, the first thing I'll say, if SARS had not been able to turn around their performance and not performing at the level that we see today, as a country we would be in a very different position, and we would be having a very different discussion to the one that we are having here today, which is largely positive, if you like. So you have to give SARS their kudos. And you have to congratulate them for what they've done. Is there still more work to be done? Oh, absolutely. We are a long, long way away from ideally where we should be in terms of our compliance levels and the ability of SARS to collect what is due to our taxpayers. Insofar as those additional funds that we've provided to SARS are concerned, so those are coming through in the medium term. We've seen some of that already injected into hiring additional debt collectors and so on. SARS, incidentally, has not made any dent in that tax debt book as of yet, but that in some respects is not unexpected. It will take time for that investment to pay off, and I've little doubt that over the next year we will start to see some of that investment, if you like, that's been made in SARS starting to bear fruit, and we will bear the benefits of that going forward, because none of that has been factored into the revenue forecasts over even the next year, let alone the medium term as well. So, the outlook is good, provided SARS is able to do what it needs to be doing.
Yeah, so those compliance efforts likely to continue to lift revenue. I'll give you a different question. Excess duties on tobacco and alcohol lifted in line with inflation. No surprise there, but I'm wondering whether sin taxes are still an effective and reliable revenue stream. We also heard of the finance minister highlighting what we are seeing playing out in the illicit trade market, that of course also impacting some of the big businesses, British American Tobacco closing its only plant here in South Africa.
It's definitely a balancing act. When it comes to sin taxes, it increases year on year, and it's expected. 2026 is no exception. And yes, with an increase of the sin taxes, what we're going to see is an uptick in the illicit trade. So I know SARS is looking at it and looking into how they peg down and sort of stamp out illicit trade, but I think we're very far away from it.
All right, before I let you to go, Kyle, I'd like to get your sense around broadening the tax base, right? Gambling has been a really big issue in the country, and the DTIC has, spoken about a tax within that industry.
Yeah, look, so, I mean, it goes without saying that proposal that has come from Treasury is a contentious proposal. The positive is that they remain open to consultation in relation to that. So I think there's going to be a lot of movement insofar as that proposal is concerned. In terms of what it looks like ultimately, if it looks like anything at all. I mean, there is also the possibility that the tax doesn't go ahead. So the real positive is that government is not just railroading this through, but they are prepared to consult and have extended the period for consultation insofar as that's concerned. But it is, as I said, it is contentious and it's debatable whether or not that's the right way to address things. And those discussions will unfold in the coming months.
All right, we wait and see. Kyle, Devs, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate you joining us this afternoon. That was Devs Moodley, Senior Manager and Tax Consulting at Forvis Mazars, and Kyle Mandy, Director of Tax Technical and Policy at PwC.